And the big show in English football at the moment, though, is of course the fact that Everton are on the hunt for a manager. And stereotypically, they have like a couple of different options. One is very different from the other. To try and tease this out and tell us a little bit about how we got there, I'm delighted to say Dominic King is with us. Dominic, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very well. Good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah. Sean Dyche and Marcelo Bielsa, not the same.
No, they're very much not the same. But Marcelo Bielsa is the preferred candidate. How we'll see how. I think there's been some preliminary talks so far, and we'll see how that progresses.
What do you think is driving? Is Sean Dyche a break glass in case of emergency situation, and actually what they really want is Bielsa, and if Bielsa turns them down, they just want to get out of this season without being relegated, and so Dyche is kind of a fallback?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, if they really wanted, if Dyche was the top target, they could do it immediately. He's out of work. It could be done by now. I think it's a bit more tricky with Bielsa. So it's as ever with Everton. It's going to be. I hope it doesn't turn into some of the sagas that we've had in the past in terms of managerial appointments. I remember the first time after Ronald Koeman had been sacked by Fard Mashiri, and there was a month of toing and froing, and there's just no time for that now. Everton have got to act swiftly and get the man into who they believe is going to get them out of trouble.
Is Bielsa not one of those managers who it feels like needs a pre-season to do those grueling double sessions to make sure that the team can do all the running that he wants them to do?
Well, I mean, I've said in the piece I've written in the Daily Mail this morning about Bielsa. I mean, he's had an influence on so many coaches, his ideas on football and whatever, and the far-reaching, but I think he's going to have to be a magician to come into Everton and get them playing in 3 or 4 months the way that he wants football to be played, because it's a hodgepodge squad that's made up of players from 7 different managers. It's they're short of money. They need new blood to come in and revive them, and it really is a terribly difficult situation.
I mean, the end of the Lampard tenure was I guess something that Everton fans have come to expect in recent years, Dominic, and the hatred there seems to be towards the board. It wasn't towards Frank Lampard right to the bitter end. Even interesting to watch Jimmy Carragher on Monday Night Football last night, where he says this is the worst run club in England, and I know Jimmy was a fan of Everton in his school days, but this seems to be directed very much not towards the managers. It's definitely towards the board.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly where the anger's going. I think that the very fact that there wasn't any banners, there wasn't any chanting against Frank Lampard. There was just a sort of I don't know whether there was a video on social media over the weekend of some fans speaking to Frank Lampard before he went to the London Stadium. I think it was at the team hotel, and they were lads who travel around everywhere to watch Everton, and they were saying that, this isn't your fault. He's coming at the end of an unbelievable cycle of change and disruption. He had one transfer window. He lost his best player last summer. wasn't replaced. He wanted to. He's looked for signings to come in straight away in January. It wasn't possible to do. He wanted to sign Danny Ings, was very, very keen on doing that. Never got over the line because Everton could only do a loan, and Aston Villa wanted to do a straight sale. So there's been a lot of mitigating circumstances, and that means Frank isn't absolutely totally to blame for this. Yes, he's well aware of the situation, and he's been in football long enough to know that if you have a run of results like this, it's very hard for a manager to survive, and there have been some mistakes along the way.
It's not even.
It's far deeper. Yeah, it's far deeper than just the manager. Absolutely far deeper.
It's not just though the number of managers there have been under the Farhad Mashiri reign since 2016. 3 directors of football as well, which hints at something deeper. That is the problem. That clearly leaves you wondering where does the club base itself? They clearly haven't they don't have a platform or a basis or a common denominator that they can run with every season. It seems to be they're almost flailing, and Mashiri seems to be the common denominator in this one.
Yeah, he is. He's made the decision on this. He's made the decision to sack Frank. He's going to be responsible for appointing the next manager. You know, we go back over the 7 years, and there's been Ronald Koeman, who was brought in to be the Hollywood manager in the Northwest for Everton, to go alongside Klopp, Guardiola, and Mourinho. That was the dream. They spent an awful lot of money in his first 12 months to try and get the right players in to get European football straight away, and they accomplished that. They got into the Europa League, but that turned out to be a disaster in terms of what they did in the group stage against Atalanta and Lyon. 6-7 years ago now, and then they went to the young up-and-coming manager after Marco Silva after Sam Allardyce. They went for experience in Carlo Ancelotti and Rafa Benitez. They've gone for another young up-and-coming English manager in Frank. It's chopping and changing from one thing to another. And as I said, the comparison that I keep is in my mind with Everton at the minute is Sunderland and Aston Villa, who went through periods of switching their managers with great haste, bringing in players who weren't of the right necessary calibre, and both of them were eventually relegated. And you know, Everton have got it all to do in the second half of the season to get themselves out of this position.
How soon do you actually expect a decision to be made? I know you make the point that it's important to get it done before the Arsenal game, but getting the right decision, if Bielsa is the right man for the job and actually could save them this season, if they have to wait an extra week to get that, fair enough. But equally, at the same time, the clock is ticking, so it's difficult.
No, it is difficult. And there's no indication yet that the Bielsa would be ready to jump on board. I mean, this is him being Everton's preferred target and him wanting the job are two very separate things. If he can be convinced, then they have to get the deal done quickly, because as I said, it's where are we now? 11 days away from when they play Arsenal. Every session is going to be vital. Every session is going to be crucial in terms of getting his methods and ideology across to the players. Also, you have to factor in the transfer window closes this time next week. He's going to want to bring players in. So there's so many things that are adding up against them that they've got to get right. But you know, this is the time for decisiveness and to make strong decisions.
That the point was made on Sky last night, Dominic, about the board statement recently, where they said they couldn't attend the game for safety reasons, and Jimmy Carragher was making the point, you know, that didn't paint the Everton support in a great light. That maybe that in and of itself was a bad move by the board. Like Gary Neville making the point that maybe, look, for safety reasons they couldn't be there, but the fact that even, you know, Mashiri attends a game at the weekend and it turns out to be Frank Lampard's last in charge, there just seems to be an overriding sense of disconnect between the fans and the club generally at the moment.
That's a brilliant word. That's a brilliant word, disconnect, because that's exactly what it is. I was at Goodison last week. It's important to stress, and did at the time, that the protest was peaceful. Then there was no dissent. There was no sense of trouble or anything spilling over or getting rancorous from those who stayed behind. It was just a passionate voicing of frustration. Now, I'm not taking the threats or anything against the boards lightly, because I'm aware of some of the things that have happened, not just recently, over years. So I'm absolutely not treating that lightly at all. But it's always the few that cause the problems for many, and the vast majority of Everton and the vast majority of Evertonians are fair-minded people, honest, would recoil at the idea of doing any physical harm to anybody or issuing threats or anything like that. They're passionate people, but they know what's right and what's wrong. There's idiots in every group, every set of fan base across the world, and we can't let the idiots taint taint the reputation of the many, unfortunately. The idea that all Everton fans have been tarnished by this statement, I find awful, and it's just not on.
Dominic, do you think that in world football the job is looked on as a good job at the moment, or is there definitely a reticence to get involved with the current board and ownership structure? I guess if you're a Wayne Rooney figure, for example, and obviously he has a job at the moment, and we've had this conversation. If I was Rooney taking over, I want a full pre-season and I want a transfer window and several transfer windows and some guarantee that I'm not kind of trying to ride in to rescue the situation as it is at the moment, and he doesn't seem to be being linked with the job anyway. So, but I can see why other good managers would be like, well, I'm just going to wait and see what happens there if the ownership stays around, if Bill Kenwright's still around. So, they're fishing in a smaller pond. What's your sense about the future direction of the ownership and how long they're going to be around?
Again, a great question, because he's so mysterious, Farhad Moshiri, that you wouldn't know. He's made it clear that he would welcome investment, to help with the build of the new stadium, to give Everton the resources they need to be competitive. He's pumped an awful lot of money in. You can't say that about him. He hasn't been shy in putting his hand in his pocket. What the future holds with him, what his visions for the club are, other than taking Everton to the new stadium at Bramley-Moore Dock in 2 seasons' time, or in the season after next. We don't know what he's thinking. But Everton should be a job that every hungry manager in football strives to be at. Brilliant fan base, passionate. If a manager could come in and make Everton a force again and bring success, they'd be almost deified. Everton fans are aching for a team to be proud of, and I would think if you were ambitious and you knew your football, it would be a wonderful job to take in the right circumstances. But unfortunately for Everton, in the last 5-6 years, the circumstances just haven't been right for anyone.
You've been writing the Daily Mail, Dominic, about conversations that apparently have happened between Lampard and Moshiri since the West Ham game at the weekend. To the point that has Moshiri been discussing recruitment with Lampard and getting his thoughts, which, if he's getting his last little bits and thoughts from Lampard before he kicks them out the door, seems, for want of a better word, a bit slimy.
Well, I'll just tell you what I've reported. It's the discussions that were going on over the weekend involved them asking Frank what he thought was needed, where needed strengthening before the window closes, and that's what's created the state of flux. On Sunday night there were reports about him being on the brink, which as I said, Frank knows the situation in football in terms of if you have a run of results like that, then there's nothing you can do as a manager. It only heads one way. But it was a very sort of dispiriting 48 hours, I think, and I just feel so sorry for Frank that he's been put through a situation like this.
In terms of his ability as a football manager, though, he does have to take some responsibility for what's happened, because he had the off-season to build and create a culture, and there's definitely some decisions that he's made recently where off the back of a good performance he'd change the team and the team wouldn't be as good. So it's not like he's blameless. No,
I want to make that clear. I'm not saying that he is absolutely absolved of blame, because if you are a manager and you have that's weakness of results, and of course it comes back to you. He has made mistakes. I think he would recognise that in some games. But you talk about pre-season and whatever. One window at the end of one window at the end of a season that they only just about escaped relegation, and a truncated pre-season as well, given the World Cup, and one transfer window was never going to be enough to solve the problems that he inherited. Not a chance. It was the same with Rafa Benitez. What was Rafa Benitez going to do with one transfer window and £2 million to £2 million to try and turn things around. It's impossible. What Everton are having to do is sell the best players to bring people in. That's what happened with Luca Dean last year. They sold him to bring 2 fullbacks in the January window. They sold Richarlison to bring players in the summer. I dare say something like that might happen again before this window closes. So if you're constantly selling your best players and not bringing in players of a either comparable quality or better quality, then you're only going to go one way as a team, and that's what's happened.
One last thing I did want to touch on, in your own piece you talked about Onana saying that Lampard is still the best player in training. That's a bit of a double-edged sword. You know, there's bang of Glenn Hoddle and bang even Roy Keane not being happy to, you know. No,
I'll be clear about that. That was my words. It wasn't. Onana said that about him. I just thought it was. Frank wasn't like sort of it didn't have that kind of attitude like Hoddle or anything like that. It was just striking the fact that Lampard was such an amazing player, and you could still see that at 44 that he had everything. What I mean is the fact that he should, the manager shouldn't be the best player in football in a football squad, should he?
No.
There should be players coming through that that can do more than him.
I do wonder, was he ever tempted to register and pick himself?
Well, there's an irony, isn't it, that they've not only lost the best, they've lost the manager, but they've also lost the best midfielder.
Dominic, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million for making time for us. Cheers. It's Dominic King of the Daily Mail giving us his thoughts on the situation at Everton.